The Mid-America Veterans Museum is a 501c3 nonprofit business. The museum would not exist without the donations of our generous community. Your donations ensure the museum continues to share and preserve the stories of our veterans. Would you like to be part of something special? To donate, visit mavm.org and click on Donate. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only. The primary purpose of the Operation Insight podcast is to educate. The views, information, or opinions expressed on the Operation Insight podcast are solely the views of the individuals or guests involved and by no means represent absolute facts. Operation Insight does not accept responsibility for their views or comments. The Operation Insight podcast may at times cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to suicide, abuse, violence, severe mental illness, sex, drugs, and alcohol addiction. You are advised to refrain from watching or listening to the Operation Insight podcast if you are likely to be offended or adversely impacted by any of these topics. Neither the company, host, director, or the guest shall at any time be liable for the content covered, causing offense, distress, or any other reaction. Welcome to the Operation Insight podcast from the Mid-America Veterans Museum with your host, Jason Galvin, and co-host, Sergeant Ethan Gross. Well, welcome back, family. Tonight in studio, we have two special guests. First, we have U.S. Navy veteran Petty Officer 2nd Class Don Luney and Dr. Julie Smith with Reemerge. Ethan, go ahead and kick us off.
Sure. Thanks, Jason. Primarily, we're going to be talking about Reemerge Fitness, something that Dr. Julie Smith, or Julie, is part of as a physical therapist, and an organization that Don actually participates in as a veteran. We're excited to have both of you here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to share your stories and your experiences. I'd like to start with Don, since you're a veteran in the house for this episode. Start off by telling us about how your service began.
Well, my service began in May 21st, 1984. Was graduating high school, trying to figure out what I was going to do, where I was going to go. You know, my family, we didn't really have the financial means to look at college. I had the grades to go, didn't understand I could probably get, scholarships and all those things, but my older brother joined the Air Force and was doing great with it. So I went ahead and was looking around. My grandfather was a Navy veteran, worked in the aviation sector as well as an engine mechanic, also a flight engineer, so he was kind of on me, harping about go Navy, go Navy. And so I did. I went down and talked to the Navy recruiter and took all the exams and joined the Navy and put on delayed entry in February of 84. The rating I wanted to go into was aviation electronics, but they didn't have any openings at the time. So they put me in as an electronics technician, which is the shipboard version of the aviation. And I was on the waiting list, and he told me, well, there'll be cancellations. Trust me. He said, when people go in, there's always somebody that goes in and they can't make the determination or they refuse to go or
Sure.
whatever it is.
They didn't quite know what they signed up for.
Right, or they just refuse to go when it comes time to go
Sure.
after they've got the school guaranteed. Well, he called me on short notice the week before I graduated high school and wanted me to leave that week. And I was like, I still got another week to go here,
You didn't want to go AWOL from school.
Yeah. So he called me back and said, okay, we can put it off. So I literally graduated on Sunday, May 20th at noon. And by 5 p.m. that afternoon, I was on a bus to Little Rock and going to the MEP station. And then on the 21st, I raised my hand and went through all the rituals again and became...
What a transition.
Wow. Yeah.
That's pretty quick.
That is pretty quick. Wow.
Same day, and as I say, I never looked back. I never came home.
So aviation electronics technician.
Yes.
But if I understand correctly, you had some other hats that you wore during your decade in service. Tell us about those.
Well, I did a lot of different things. When you go through your basic training and everything, and then you go to your primary school or your A school. That's where they trained me to be an aviation electronics technician. And then you go to the fleet, as everybody likes to call it. Well, you go to the Fleet Replacement Aircraft Maintenance Program, or FRAMP, and I went down to Kingsville, Texas. And they teach you about the specific aircraft you're going to work on, which in my case was a pilot training aircraft, which was an old reconditioned TA-4J. It looked all right from the outside. It was painted white and orange, high-vis markings so you could find it when the pilot crashed it, because that's what student pilots do, It's like, student drivers,
Exactly.
You'd be surprised what they can do.
That's what they refer to as the Skyhawk, is that right?
That is correct. It's the Skyhawk.
Is it a pretty resilient aircraft, I'm guessing?
It's a very solid aircraft. That's why they used it for pilot training. Yeah. They ran 2 external drop tanks on it, one on each outer wing, so that if they had to, they could land on that instead of using landing gear, which saves the aircraft from being totaled and so forth. And one night I got to see that happen. We had a student pilot actually land on the drop tanks.
Wow. Tell us about that.
Yeah.
A drop tank. I don't know if I'm really familiar with
the drop
that.
tank is it's either called drop tank or blivet. It's a long tubular tank. People sometimes think that they're like missiles or something, but they're not. They're really fat, and they got little wings on the end of it. And in the front of it, there's a fuel cap that you open up and you gravity fuel it. And they transfer that fuel up into the wing, then it drives the rest of the system to fly the aircraft. But they had these tanks that are 300 gallons each under each side of the aircraft, and you can jettison them off if you needed to, or you can leave them on and, use them for fuel or whatever. The student pilot that I was talking about, he came in. We had parallel runways down there in Beeville, Texas, where I finally ended up at. The funny thing about that base, I'll tell you in a minute. At Naval Air Station Chase Field. Anyway, one pilot was coming over with a student in the back seat, or the instructor was in the back seat and the student was in the front seat. And this guy that ended up landing on the tanks and he was supposed to do a touch and go on the right, and he did it on the left. And when he came back up off of the runway, he hit the tailpipe on the other plane in front of him. So the instructor took over, did an emergency, and there's a slant runway, and he literally dove down and put it on the slant runway and saved that aircraft.
Yeah.
But the whole back end where the tailpipe is, that's where the thrust comes out. Well, it was crushed down to where you could barely put your hand in there, so you really didn't have much thrust. He was going to be a big smoking hole if he didn't put it on the ground. So
due to the other student pilot's
the other
error.
student ramming him from behind. Well, he hit him with the windshield and the nose of the aircraft, and it broke all the windows out of it. So this guy that was the student, happened to be a Marine student, he was flying. He still had plenty of fuel. So he was doing the pattern, he's circling, trying to practice his touch-and-go landing so they can get ready to go land on an aircraft carrier. Because they had an aircraft carrier painted on the runways.
Sure.
And you have to shoot the approach and, keep the datum lights because there's the little lights on the side that work and you can see if you're high, low, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so anyway, he's going around and he's shooting approach. It's late at night. It was actually about 10:30 at night. And they made everybody else come down and land so he could come in. And the fire crew goes out there, and they're sitting there. We're sitting there with a tow truck and everything.
You're expecting a crash.
Oh, yeah. We're like, how big of a fireball is this going to be,
Wow.
So we're all sitting out there on the side of the runway on the taxiway in our equipment, watching him come through. And he comes through the lights because they got the lights at the end of the runway that angle.
Yeah.
And as you come through, you can see him, and he's got his gear down. He comes through, and he freaks out. He goes around like 4 times like this. Finally, he says, okay, they say, how much fuel you got? Well, because by that time they've called all the senior pilots and the commanding officer, and they're all out there screaming at him at the LSO shack, and it was a real circus,
Talk about the pressure.
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
for sure.
You just screwed up and hit the back of another aircraft. Now you're stupid. Now put it on the ground without killing yourself. So anyway, he's coming through, and he comes through the lights, and he's like, okay, I've got it. I've got to come in, because he's got to land or punch out because he's at that, it's going to flame out, no more fuel. And he comes through the lights, and we're all looking, and he's got the gear down. You look, no tail hook down. You're like, uh-oh. So he was supposed to catch a short field arrestment, and there's a cable like an aircraft carrier, and you pull it out, and it stops you. Well, he comes in. He doesn't have the gear down. He doesn't have the tail hook down. He comes right through the lights. We're like, oh, no. So he comes in. He smashes down on the runway, and it looks like Back to the Future. There's trails of sparks going down the runway. Well, in all of his excitement, he failed to transfer the rest of the fuel out of the drop tanks.
Oh, boy.
So it's like really Back to the Future. There's fire down the runway.
Wow. Was his nickname Sparky?
So he slides, probably 3,000 feet down this runway. And so we're taking off after him, and fire trucks out there, and they're putting all this stuff out. And we go down there, and he's he's standing out beside the airplane. He's already hopped out, and he's walked over there and puked 3 times. And
Gosh.
Wow.
we had to wait for the crane, and they had to pick the plane up and let the gear
It was
down.
basically demolished, I'm guessing.
Well, what they ended up doing is they took the plane that he hit and that plane, and we pieced them together and made one good airplane.
Zombie.
Exactly.
We took the tail off of his airplane, put it on the other airplane, and then made a good airplane out of it.
The government for you, saving $1, man.
Well, then
Duct tape it together.
But then the government came in and they rebuilt the one that he landed. Then we had to take them back apart and mix and match the parts back together.
So you mentioned kind of a mock-up of an aircraft carrier. It's good to know that they practice that
Yeah.
before they
Yes,
actually
for sure.
do it on actual aircraft
and
carrier.
that's the whole thing is there's alternate fields around the base down there as well that you go to. And that's all it is for carrier qualification buildup. And they come in and they have, all the markings like you're coming in to line up and land on the aircraft carrier. And they've got the LSO down there with the pickle button, because a lot of people don't understand that even on the aircraft carrier, there's still a live person authorizing you to land or not. And they're holding a push button. And when they say green, you can come on in. You're watching all the datum lights. There's a whole light assembly that keeps you lined up, left, right, and up and down. And aircraft carriers moving all the time.
Yeah.
So they've got to get the rhythm. You got to think, I'm this far out and it's going up. Okay, well, I got to be up. I got to be down. I
I didn't think about that. That's interesting. Yeah. Moving with the ocean.
Yeah.
It's an amazing skill that
Yeah,
those pilots
for
have.
sure.
Well, and the newer aircraft actually have an ALCS where it actually will land itself. In bad weather, they don't want you to use that because you can overshoot or undershoot. And if you undershoot, you hit the back of the ship, which is a bad day. And
Well, and you never know when systems are going to fail. And you need to rely on your skill.
Correct.
Right, and that's why they train so hard for all that.
Yeah.
The reason I wanted to ask about the aircraft carrier, Don, is I want to. You had mentioned before we started here. I'd love to hear your experience on the USS Lexington.
Well, I did a deployment on the Lexington out of my first squadron in VT-25, and we went out to support the fleet, because all the squadrons take turns sending personnel out to support any aircraft that comes. And I went out as a plane captain, which you wear the brown uniform for that. Maintenance wears green, and everybody has a color and combination you wear for whatever your job is on the flight deck. But it was kind of crazy to go out there on a World War II vintage era ship for your first ever time on a ship. And
Talk about rickety.
how it was. We went through a hurricane. We pulled out. There was a hurricane in the Gulf, and we took off, went toward Tampa instead of Corpus Christi. And the hurricane was going across, and it was going to go into New Orleans, they said. So then we turned around and started back across the Gulf, and the darn thing came back out in the middle of the ocean. And there we were.
Wow.
Oh, boy.
And we were rocking and rolling for 4 solid days. I walked on the walls of the ship. Literally, people say, you can't do that. And I can tell you I did it. I can't believe I did it, but I did it, because this thing's going up and down. The waves are, when you go down, it's all gray ocean, and the wave hits and comes over the ship, and then it goes up, and all you see is gray sky, and then you're coming right back down. And then it's rolling left and right in the meanwhile. And they had a HC-16 had one of their helicopters tied down on the fantail, and it knocked some of the rotor blades off of it because the waves were breaking over the front of the ship and hitting it so hard in the back.
Wow.
Wow.
But there's flex decks in the aircraft carrier people don't realize, and that's where it bends and opens and closes. And we were in the aft portion of the ship. In order to go to the chow hall, you had to go forward and go down to the bottom of the ship, because it was opening up so big at the upper level, right below the flight deck, you could drop the 55-gallon drum down about 4 levels when it opened up. So when the ship was going up and down, it was flexing open.
Yeah.
And it goes back together and it goes boom. So imagine that for 4 days trying to sleep with that going on.
Or not sleeping.
Or not sleeping.
Yes.
And then we're in our compartment waiting, for things to break, and you're in there, and it's everything's steel, so you're in there, steel desk, steel floor, steel. Yeah. And you got steel cruise boxes with all your gear in it. And you're like the Bugs Bunny thing where him, Yosemite Sam are sitting there eating, and the bowl slides back and forth. Well, everything in the room's moving over here, and then it moves back over here. So you're in a roller chair like we're in today. You got your foot up against something holding, and you're sliding down there. Hey, how you doing? Back and forth. And so,
Have your own comedy routine.
Oh, it was, but you're trying to play cards and watching people trying to puke everywhere. It was a wonderful time,
Oh,
Well, for the sake of time, Don, we're going to get to some other things of yours that I find pretty fascinating. But I do want to get to our second guest, and then we'll reconvene as a group. So, Dr. Julie Smith, a few things I want to ask you about, Julie. Number one is, how many times have you been to Holiday World?
Two.
Two, okay.
Just two. And one of them was in college with my soccer team.
Okay, that's
Nice.
what I figured. So Julie's a graduate of University of Evansville in Indiana. I used to live in Louisville, and so
so did I.
Oh, okay, very
Yeah.
good. So I would go up to Evansville and
Yep.
Bloomington and those areas a few times, and I've been to Holiday World once. Thunderbird's my favorite
Yeah.
ride, by the way. Julie, I don't want to tell people about you for myself. I want you to be able to tell the audience about yourself. So give us an idea of who you are.
Oh, gosh. Well, I always tell people I'm a physical therapist, but so much more. I went to school for physical therapy, graduated in 2011, I believe. Yeah, 2011. Went the normal route, did outpatient physical therapy. I actually practiced in Louisville for 5 years. I had my first son when we were in Louisville and decided to move back to St. Louis around family. We moved back, I think, in 2015, like December of 2015. My mom was diagnosed with cancer in January of 2017, and that completely changed my outlook on life, what I wanted to do with my time, and essentially what brought me here. So we lost my mom in 2017, and I quickly knew I had to get out of the normal physical therapy life. There was a deep calling that I needed to do more with my time. So I did. Fast forward a few years later, I branched out and I found Emerge searching the internet. I knew I wanted to start my own company doing physical therapy in a gym. I'm not someone that likes a boss. I like to do my own thing. I will do it my own way. So that was a calling for me. And I wanted to pull in wellness with it because I watched my mom, watching someone go through cancer and not making it out will really change your view on healthcare and a lot of things. So I kind of wrap up wellness and personal development and physical therapy into what I do on the daily. And I think I found myself in Emerge in 2021, I think. So COVID was still kind of going on. Slowly ramped up. I became involved with Reemerge in 2023, I believe. And I can't imagine not being a part of Reemerge at this point. Like, going back and connecting those dots of how Reemerge fell into my lap, it was a divine intervention. The way I get to interact with the veterans and the people I have met along the way, it's just so clear to me that it's part of my story.
Well, thank you so much, Julie, for that vulnerability there, and our condolences. I know that it's still probably raw this many years later, but thank you for sharing that piece with us. Can you tell us, in the audience who doesn't know, what actually happens at Reemerge? What is a day in the life of what you do with veterans? What does that look like?
So I'll just give the brief mission statement, then I'll walk you through a day in the Reemerge veteran. So our mission is to improve the lives of the veterans in our community who have a physical disability, physical injury, or maybe a mental health issue. And our goal is to help them by offering individualized fitness targeted at mind, body, spirit. That looks different for every veteran. So we'll give them a rundown. Veteran has to apply via email to Sefton. He will get the email. He will call the veteran.
Sefton Hale.
Sefton Hale. Yep. He is
Founder.
Yes. Amazing human. He will talk to them, figure out, are they physically injured? Do they need to see Julie? Do they have an injury they need to rehab, or do they want to lose weight, or do they want to work out? Do they want to be more involved in a group? He gets an idea of what they need, and then we collaborate and come up with a plan for that veteran. Typically, there's always caveats to everything, but typically we'll give them a program for 9 to 10 weeks, and that vet gets like an individualized program, 9 to 10 weeks, and then they kind of graduate into the group portion of the program, which I personally think is the most magical piece of Reemerge. We offer, 4 or 5 group sessions a week where they can come, pop in, 5,
Yep.
thanks, Don, 5 sessions a week where they can come, pop in, work out, and it's way more than a workout. That is, I think, a built-in support group for these people. I think it's a family, it's a bond, it's brotherhood, it's a place where they can go and feel seen and heard and understood. And I think that's where the magic of the program lives.
This
Yep.
might be a great spot for Don to hop in as someone who participates at Reemerge Fitness and someone who I believe has benefited from it greatly.
I have. I've been involved for 3 years now. I went through, and the VA was the one that turned me on to it through the whole health program. But I did, as Julie said, you go to the website and you select on you'd like to join, and you fill out the little email, and it sends a message off to Sefton. And then Sefton Health will evaluate it and give you a contact time. With me, I came in one-on-one with him 3 times, and then he said that, I could benefit from the group. And as Julie said, there's a number of group sessions. They kind of rotate. Sometimes they have somewhat framework of when they are, but there are some days that they move things around depending on what's going on. And there are times that actually some of the veterans run the groups, which is a throwback to a lot of people, their time in the military. There's all branches of the service there, everything but Space Force and Coast Guard right now. We've got, ones they like to make fun of. They always call them Chair Force. And then they make fun of those Navy guys like me. We're squiddly diddlies. And I have to tell them, well, I'm aviation, so I'm another bird of a feather here. I'm a whole different color,
Flying fish.
That's right.
Last name Luney, we already talked about it.
Yeah. And then we got those dumb Army guys, got a bunch of those. And then we got some of those, jarheads, they walk around and go,
Crayon eaters.
Oh, yeah, that happens a lot. There's been a couple of the Army guys come in with, some crayons, throw them on the floor and go, get them, boy. So, there's a lot of camaraderie, like, back when people were in the military, there's a lot more understanding because of the fact that you have that military background together. You can do things, say things. Some of the puns and things that people are more centered around a military mindset.
Dark humor?
Oh, there's dark humor, but there's also the other things that happen. People poke fun at each other because of their branch. But in the end, they have each other's back. They can talk about things openly. My whatever hurts or I don't feel good. There's a lot of networking about how to get things that you need through the different programs, such as the VA. People talk amongst themselves. We have people that are amputees that work with us. We have people that are full body, active. I've got a lot of things wrong. I'm 100% disabled myself. I got a bad knee, and I got a lot of headache problems and stuff. Julie comes in on, Wednesday mornings an hour earlier, and we come in, and it's first come, first serve, and she spends, 5-10 minutes giving you things that can help you with whatever your problem might be that day. It's not anything the veteran has to pay for. You just have to show up and do it. And there's nobody holding you accountable but yourself or your people that are in the program. If you want to get involved and lose weight and have that camaraderie, it's there. If you get frustrated and want to walk away, that's your choice. But if you want to be involved, they're all about the involvement. And they have a lot of little activities that we go do, like recently we did the parade out in Wentzville, and that was a really neat thing. A lot of the guys and gals showed up. We're probably more heavily weighted on the guys' side than we are the women's side, but it's not because they're not welcome. It's because so many of them are timid about coming into the gym when they know there's a bunch of veteran guys there, and you're like, when they show up, they kind of laugh about it because they say, well, it's no different than when they were in. But for some reason, I don't know why it's so hard to get them to come. But it seems like it's harder to get the women to show up and come than it is the men.
That was a question I actually had, Don, for you and for Julie. I think some people will have a thought. I mean, I've definitely thought this before when thinking about getting a fitness or a gym membership. What makes Reemerge Fitness different from a place like Planet Fitness, a place like Gold's Gym?
Good question.
Well, from my perspective, the biggest difference is whenever you're out there training, no matter who's running it, if it's Julie or if Aaron used to be heavily involved, but then also Sefton, if you get over to do an exercise and it hurts or you can't do it, all you do is say, hey, and they'll come over and they'll give you an alternate. So you immediately get the same muscle group work, but you don't do that because, well, you can't deadlift, 160 pounds right now. Okay, what we're going to do is put you on this machine over here, and we're going to move the same muscle group back and forth, but we're not going to have you put that load on your knee.
Sure.
And that's the biggest thing that I've found is the quickness to adjust. When you're in there, on a normal day, there's anywhere from 8 to 15 people. And so they're running around, watching this, and they'll explain, you got these 3, you got to do, however many reps on each of these, 3 cycles, and then they'll go over here and take the other group of them, and they'll keep us rotating around. But then, as I was saying, we got people that are amputees, people that have, major structural problems from, different things happening, from everything from an IED to, I fell off a tower. There's different stories out there of what happened to people, but the fact is that their limitations are openly addressed during the workout. So if you come over there and you're saying, well, I can't lift this or I can't do that, they come in immediately and say, okay, I got an alternate for you. And they walk you over here and you'll do something independent that is working the same muscle groups, but you're able to work and keep with the group.
So it sounds to me like, and I'm really happy to hear you say this, Don and Julie, it sounds to me like once you walk through the doors of Reemerge, you're not on your own. You're going to have some sort of personalized, tailored fitness plan for you. And you're not just going to be left to your own devices. If something goes wrong or you need some extra assistance, it's right there for you.
And that is the key, is that they are there for you. They make sure that you're not hurting yourself and that you're advancing. Because that's what it's all about. We've got people like myself been in it for, 2-3 years. We're kind of like, the running buddies. We show up at the gym and everybody starts hassling each other and the things that you do. When someone new comes in, you will welcome them in and you find out their story of where they're coming from and all that. Some people are pretty timid and you got to work to get them to open up. Most of the people do eventually open up, and that's how the program slowly grows. With all the different classes, there's different times, morning and night, normally on Wednesdays and Thursday. There's even a Saturday morning out at their Winsville location. So it depends on, if you're working, you're non-working, when you can come. They've got program times that fit different people. And so it's very flexible. There's no membership. There's no, you got to be here or else. If you don't show up, you don't count. Well, you can be gone for 6 months. You show back up, welcome back,
I'm glad you mentioned that about the satellite location in Winsville.
Yes.
Just so people understand, there's the satellite location in Winsville, but the main gym is St. Charles proper. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Julie, I hope you don't mind. Do you mind if I ask about your mom?
No, not at all.
If I understand correctly, your mom said something to you not long before she passed that I think was a game changer for you in a lot of ways, if not in all ways. If I misquote this, please correct me. But she said to you, Jules, I wish I would have known to take care of myself when it mattered.
Yeah.
Now, your mom, was it melanoma?
It was melanoma, skin cancer, yeah.
A preventable form of cancer.
Yep.
Tell us about the effect of that on you.
When she told me that, my mom and I got made fun of my whole life because I was obsessed with my mom. Like, we were so close. We still are. But when she told me that, it broke me. It broke me, one, because I had a child at the time, and I couldn't imagine saying that to him. And then it broke me for her as well. And so I use that every day for my own health. Sorry. And then I hope that it just radiates off me to anyone I'm around.
It does. I can confirm that.
Yeah.
The reason I wanted to bring that up, Julie, is because I think your story so perfectly fits into the story of veterans, especially veterans who have, like Don mentioned, maybe they have PTSD, maybe they have not just physical wounds, but possibly moral wounds, wounds that you don't see physically.
Yep.
And I think you've been put into this position in a really special place where you can help them, not just, like you said, it's not just about physical therapy.
Yeah.
It's about mind, body, spirit.
And empathy.
And empathy, yeah. I'd love to hear from your perspective, Julie, how it has affected you working at Reemerge.
You mean working with the veterans?
Yes.
Oh my God. Do we have time? We'll be here all
We
night.
have time, yeah.
It has fundamentally changed my life. They are, like Don said, you are not alone. And I think watching them, I sit back and watch them a lot. I'm constantly learning from them. They're hurting. Humans are hurting. We all are. But watching them show up day in and day out, not only for themselves, but for each other, it has shown me what the human spirit's all about, really. If I could wrap it up in one sentence, they've taught me the power of presence and love and just surrounding yourself with people who care about themselves. And then you're not only showing up for Don, you're showing up for Willie and your buddies every Wednesday. And if there's one morning Don wasn't there and we're all texting, like, where is Don? It's family. It's really, really cool.
Don, do you think that if there is any days that you are thinking, should I go, that you get that extra push because other guys are there needing that support from you and you're needing that from them?
Oh, absolutely. As Julie was pointing out, I missed a day last week, and I suffer from chronic migraines. I had a colloid brain cyst removed, and they put a permanent drain in for my pressure problem in my brain. And anyway, I went in to this deal with the doctors, and they decided to change all my medication around, and it was making me very dizzy and nauseous and everything, so I just couldn't get up and go that day, and I felt really guilty about it. But then, for them to be reaching back going, where are you, why are you not here, and so forth, and it's that kind of camaraderie that we're talking about here, that once you get involved and people start, kidding each other back and forth, it becomes much like your days in the military, where when you don't show up, it's not, oh, you're UA or whatever. It's like, well, where the heck are they? It's like, the camaraderie of, they want to know where you're at and give you a hard time about, you're skating out, you're not pulling your weight, you're being, whatever, you're not showing up, Well, and that's all kind of the ribbing that goes back and forth, when people get over there doing, a rep and you see somebody struggling, you don't go over there and go, come on, suck it up. You go over there and you might tickle them or something. I mean,
If that's their sort of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like the way that you would have done back in your military days. I know the Army guys get off on that screaming, yelling at each other, calling each other, little girls and stuff like that. But in the Navy, you always like to poke fun at people.
Oh my goodness, that was good.
So, Julie, you host a podcast, Conversations with Jules and Ange.
Too.
Ange is Dr. Angela Bleecher.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
I've been lucky enough to listen to a few episodes, or at least segments of episodes. An episode I listened to recently was, I'm not going to remember the exact title, but essentially, the only advice you need is don't give up.
Yeah.
And so I love that you're here, and I love that you have this experience as a fellow podcaster, because, and just meeting you, I can tell from our conversations previously, I think you have a very special eye for humanity. So I want to ask you this question. Those days where you're observing and you're watching the veterans and you're seeing their camaraderie build and you're seeing their mental acuity and mental strength build, what have you taken from that? What has been your ultimate perspective of veterans and the veteran experience post-service?
Loaded question.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, I'm an Army guy, so I probably asked it in a dumb way.
He needs to be tickled.
Yeah.
Good you
I think what I'm trying to ask, I'm trying to do it in a non-Army way. I'll try to do it in an Air Force way.
There you go.
To me, you're someone who thinks very critically about human experience. I've gotten that sense from speaking with you. I've gotten that sense from listening to your podcast. When you're watching these veterans at Reemerge Fitness, when you're watching people like Don and the others, is there something that you have uncovered, and it doesn't have to be an original thought, but something you've uncovered about the veteran experience that your normal person off the street wouldn't know, and they should know?
I think what's coming to me, that's a hard question. But I think and I even had this in my notes today, they always mention the word camaraderie. I think they know the value of support. They know the value of I've got your back, because they all mention it. They'll all say, I come for the camaraderie. And I kind of giggled one time. I was like, did you guys all rehearse that? They all say it. But I think that's what it is. They know they're not alone, or the value of not being alone. They know the value of other people having their back.
It's hard to go from being on a team to not being on a team.
Mm-hmm.
Day you're in the uniform on a team. This day you're not, and so I'm not a veteran. I'm a Gold Star family member, but the camaraderie, even for the families, is at that level. And so I could only imagine 10 times how that would be for a veteran, and needing that team, someone to support you.
Well, in de facto of when you get out of the military, you're no longer in that group of people that are like-minded and like age. Because in the military, you have like a 20-year, 30-year run of age. So everybody starts out there maybe 17, and, they top out in the 40s. And if you're out in the civilian sector world, you walk in, you could be 47 years old, and you're working for a 21-year-old. And you said, well, that kind of happens in the military, when a new officer comes in. But then again, you can walk in, and you have all these people that are working on the same goal. You find, let's go hang out, let's go do all this stuff, and they all work together. And most jobs, you find people, they go to work, and when they clock out, they clock out. They don't remember who the heck you are, If they see you at the store, they go, with their head down, keep running by with the cart. The military is all about you're a group. Even when you're off duty, you're on duty. I was in flight status. I flew over 2,000 hours, and when we landed, we went to the hotel. You had to go share a room with somebody, and you were hanging out with everybody still until you got back on the plane and went somewhere. Yeah. And you were always as a group. You were always functioning as that group. And then you have somebody with you. Well, when something starts going down, I can be arguing with you and tell you I'm going to kick your back. Well, as soon as he says he's going to get you're going to step up and thump him on the head for me,
Right.
Because I'm going to thump him and you're going to thump him. We're going to get him together. And that's kind of the thing about the military. You don't get so much in outside of that. In the civilian sector, people say they're with you or they got your back or whatever, but it's nothing quite like the military. The military has a whole nother level, and you become more of a family. It's like I was talking about, you start badgering each other about your service brand or what you did, or you were a bullet catcher or whatever. People give all kinds of, condensations of things that make fun of, like the Air Force. Oh, we couldn't go flying because we didn't have the chalk pulling squadron in today, there's all those jokes that go on back and forth. But it's good ribbing back and forth, but knowing that you have that same like background and you are like family, and you watch out for each other. Yeah. And you help each other. As I started to allude to earlier, when people come into the system, I can't tell you how many people I've met through Reemerge that I've helped them get in touch with a coach through the VA or somewhere to get their ratings improved or get them treatment they desperately needed because they didn't understand to go through whatever process to get there. And that's part of the whole thing that you get from this camaraderie is listen to each other, you talk to each other, you find out about each other. And it takes a while for certain people to open up. You meet people with PTSD problems. You meet people with physical issues. Whatever their issue is, you don't know until they open up and tell you. There's not a player card that you go, oh, well, here comes Jules, and she's got this and that.
It's a long list.
Oh, emotional baggage. Oh, my. Yeah, it's got a footnote that says, her husband says. Oh.
I think this is a good segue, Don. I'm glad you mentioned that. If I'm wrong, correct me, but I'm assuming not everybody at Reemerge is combat MOS or a combat job.
I'm a technical person, aviation background. I worked on electronics in the Navy, and then I worked in flight simulation for 30 years whenever I left the Navy.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because that's another good segue. I just for a moment, I want to dip back into your service, Don. I want to hear about you rewriting the, is it E6A avionics course?
My third duty station, after I had been an in-flight technician on the EC-130Q at VQ4, I got orders to become an actual instructor, and I went through instructor training and got stationed at an amateur Gradette 1080. The courseware was just stood up as I came in. They'd been there. There'd been people there for almost 3 years, and they started the outline, and they were doing all the things to get the trainers in place and all these things. When I got there, I got heavily tasked with writing all the courseware. So I wrote the student guide, the instructor guide, the actual tests, the lab tests. I wrote all those documents, had to get them in the right format, in the right context. You had to write your enabling objective, your training objectives, and all these things that fill out the requirements. Because unlike a civilian sector course, you don't go in and go, there's an airplane, and where's this plug located? Well, you have to write a whole description. You have to have a training objective. Training objective is the student will, at the completion of this lesson, be able to blah, 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 blah. Then you have enabling objectives. You have however many it takes to.
It needs to be essentially a manual. You need to be able to pick it up and do exactly what it says.
Right, and you have to follow it verbatim. And then when I give you a test, you have to answer. It's open book, but you have to learn how to use the books and so forth. And, you know, I had to do my own technical pubs. You had to have enough books to run a classroom of 8. So I'm standing up there in front of a classroom of 8 people every day teaching, and then I'm spending half my night writing courseware, rewriting things and correcting things the way that it's going to work better and so forth. We had an integrated avionics trainer that was built by Boeing, who actually built the E-6A aircraft, and it was an actual nose of an aircraft, and they had a lower lobe, which was the bottom section where all the avionics and cargo bay and all that is, and they were all computer interlocked, and so they had boxes that represented the avionics pieces. So if you went out there and you took the box out without turning off the breakers and so forth, it would alert me at the instructor station that, so I didn't have to stand over their shoulder and go, what are you doing? Did you do this? Did you do that? You know, I could just let them go do their troubleshooting and replacement and op check just like they were doing it on the flight line. And I could sit at the instructor station, watch the monitors and the interlocks, and it made them a real-world technician when they came out of our course, which is a big advancement because my first training course was you had a book, you had an instructor, and they would get up there and read very casually to you about this button does this, and now if you press, yeah, exactly. And you're back there trying not to fall out of your chair, and, you know.
So the reason I wanted to ask you about that is, and I hope this isn't an offensive term to you, Don, but you were kind of a nerd in the Navy.
Yeah, I would say yes. I was, you know, an electronics guy. The other people that worked on the aircraft always looked at us as the nerds. We were the nerds. And I'll say that with pride.
Well, you should. And the reason I wanted to say that is you're keeping up with the best of them at Reemerge. I mean, if he's not, tell me, Julie. But
Yes.
But so Reemerge is not strictly, oh, you were a grunt in the military.
No.
Oh, you were a combat. You know.
No, we have plenty of those people in the program. But there are other people like myself that were more technical minded, you know. Sure. We used to joke, we'd fly around in the airplane, we'd look out the window and we'd go, oh, look, there's a per diem check, you know.
Well, I think that's part of the beauty of Reemerge. It is truly all encompassing. It's a melting pot. One last thing, Don, I got to read this here. Realm of the Arctic Circle, to all sailors, wherever ye may be. Oh, my goodness. And to all polar bears, walrus, seals, whales, huskies. Okay, tell the audience what I'm reading.
It's a Blue Nose Award. If you go above the Arctic Circle, you get a Blue Nose Award in the Navy. One of the missions we had, we actually flew to the North Pole, flew over the magnetic pole, the physical pole, and landed back in Sonderstrom, Greenland for 31-hour stop. It was it's pretty interesting. When we landed, we had almost a foot of ice on the nose radome of the aircraft.
Wow.
And so we were really heavy, and we had to go out there and chip it off. But we spent 31 hours at that stop, and it was an interesting stop. There's a natural hot spring that comes out of the ground right there by the little strip of land where they got the runway. And at the time, it was one of the Strategic Air Command's outposts. And they had all these Norwegian scientists there doing these studies. And none of the buildings had windows, because I guess it's just, it gets that cold in the wintertime. And it had signs everywhere that said, don't turn anything off. You never shut the motor off. You never, nothing goes cold iron there. We went over, and they took us to the barracks. It was really nice for where you were, and every room had its own, nice beds and everything. We didn't have to share any rooms or stuff. Then they took us down to the little bar they had, and all these scientists were in there, and they had this, little romper room duck thing that you roll with a little stick on it.
Yeah.
Well, they had one of those, and these Norwegian scientists were getting on the bar, and they were rolling this thing around. You couldn't lift it up off the table, but you had to leave room for the duck to go by, and if it knocked your drink over or they picked it up, everybody at the bar gets a free drink. And so we're there, and they're trading us for all of our patches. We walked out of there, and nobody had a patch on their uniform when they left, because we didn't have to buy any drinks. We just had to give a patch up every time we wanted to drink.
That's awesome.
How do you explain that to your supply sergeant when you come back?
The mission commander said we needed new stuff.
There you go. I just realized, Julie, not only was my question earlier stupid because I'm an Army guy, but also I forgot to preface it with something that's, I think, really important about your story. You were an athlete, a collegiate athlete, soccer. Mm-hmm. Something I read about you is, and this is a very common thing, but not a lot of people talk about it. Once you graduated and you no longer had that identity as a collegiate athlete, you sort of felt lost in some way.
I was going to mention that when he was talking about when you go, it's like a loss of identity, essentially. And I think that you guys feel that. God, what I would give to go back and work out with college soccer players twice a week would be so cool. I think it's the same thing. Yeah.
So tell us about the golf tournament coming up.
Yeah, so we are doing a fundraiser for Reemerge. It is October 20th at Fort Woods Golf Course in Troy, Missouri.
And Jason, you already got a team.
Yeah, you got a team.
I tried to get on Jason's team. You already had one.
Oh.
I got to find one for myself.
Sorry. If we don't have a full team, Ethan, which I think we do, then we could probably have you on there. But
you had to rub it in again one more time.
What else? We're looking for golf teams, sponsors, donations of any kind. This is our big fundraiser for our nonprofit.
And is this what annual is this?
First
annual.
First
okay.
annual.
That's great. Before we close out, I think it's worth to have both of you separately give us basically like your elevator pitch or why veterans should come to Reemerge and why they should join the family.
Well, from my perspective, I think that there's a lot to be gained by the camaraderie, but also by the fact that it gets people out and moving again. There's several people that have shown up that literally couldn't bend over and tie their shoes probably, and now they're out there working out every day with us, doing things, because, this gives them that motivation to actually get out and be part of the group again, but it gets them out of the house, gets them moving and doing things that they say, well, I can't do that anymore. Well, there's people that, like, for instance, just, what was it, last week, whenever they went out for that shooting competition, we had one of our amputees take off, and he didn't finish dead last, but he beat an able-bodied guy in a cross-country shooting thing. Wow. So they went out, and they had to do all the obstacles and climb over this and shoot and climb. Yeah. And Ricky is there at the gym, 2 or 3 times a week, working out, doing things. Got half a leg, and this has brought him around. I mean, he was there's so many people that when they first come in, their ideal of surviving was they were going down to whatever organization, the VFW, wherever, and they were, guard tackling in on the end of the bar down there, and they would tell the war story about the time they was in Afghanistan or wherever the hell they were, and that was their whole life. And now when they get in the gym working out, they find out that, there are things they can do. They start losing weight. They start becoming more active. They start becoming healthy. There's a whole nutritional thing that they can do for you through Reemerge. The physical therapy is there. And this is all at no charge to the veteran.
Yeah, amazing.
Which is a wonderful thing. So many places you go to a gym and you tell them you got any kind of special need, and they're looking at you with dollar signs.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And this is nothing like that. This is open arms, come on in. And when they go out to do some kind of a fundraiser or whatever, you're not obligated to go out and support it, but I go out openly anytime that there's an opportunity to show support for Reemerge. I've brought my truck and trailer so we could use it for the 4th of July parade because I wanted to support the thing. It wasn't because I had to or somebody was going to give me $1 or say you should after all they do for you. It was just I wanted to.
Yeah.
And that's the way this program works. That's why it's such a great program. And it's a strong program for veterans in general, no matter what your problem is or your mindset, because there's all walks of life in there. There's people that probably have close to, if not the same kind of problem you have, and they can all relate to you. And eventually there's that breakthrough to where people finally start talking and doing things. And that's way better than any of the things that you get down at the VA. The VA, they always want to analyze you and play, what kind of medication do you want this week, And you're like, throw that stuff away and let's get down here and let's really work through what the real problem is. You got aggression, let's address it. Here's some weights, throw some weights.
Sure.
You feel a little better now? If you're mad at the world, be mad at the world, but tell me what's making you mad. It's just that whole interaction that you just can't get that same understanding. People have never been in the military because they try to understand, but until you've walked that walk, you never understand why people have that mood or why they're, that guy's just an asshole. Well, yes, he is. But you know what? There's a reason he's an asshole. And I'm not making excuses for people, but they try to explain what got them set off, and people just don't understand, or I understand. No, I don't think you really understand. It's like the thank you for your service. And you appreciate that every time you hear it, but until somebody that's a veteran says it, it really doesn't hit back.
I want to also commend you, Don. You're one of our dedicated volunteers here at the museum.
Yep.
So thank you for your service and in both ways, both as a veteran and a volunteer.
There's another program I'd like to
Please.
give a pitch to. There's a program I'm involved with called Life Waters that provides diver training for veterans. So if you're a veteran, it doesn't matter if you're disabled or a quadriplegic, they have a program where they can take you out and get you qualified to do open water diving. And it's at no cost to the veteran. Located in Arnold, Missouri. They go to the pool at Jefferson Barracks to do all the workup dives. The only cost to the veteran is they go down to Merrimack Springs in southern Illinois. There's a dive location down there. It used to be a quarry. And it's a 2-day trip. You have to pay for your food and lodging and your entry in, which is $25 a day. But they provide all the gear and all the training.
And you get certified.
You get certified for free to be an open water diver.
And military people love certifications.
Yes.
That's right. but if you're ever going on a little vacation like a cruise or you're going to Hawaii or someplace, you can go down there and
that's awesome.
You can get qualified to be an open water diver.
That's amazing.
And you can take that. Anytime you want to go diving thereafter, you just contact them and you can check out all the gear you need for free and go dive anywhere you want to and bring it back and sign it back in, and that's it.
That's awesome.
You don't pay $1.
I love that.
It's just proof that there is something out there
for everybody.
Yeah, there really is. You just have to be willing to look. Julie, from your perspective, I'd love to hear your why for Reemerge.
Yeah. Don, you had a great answer, by the way. Loved that. If you're listening to this and you feel like you're truly ready to transform, more than just physically, emotionally, spiritually, we have the tools. We have the tools, we have the training, we have the heart, and we have, I think, the family and the brotherhood that will bring you there.
The last thing I wanted to say regarding Julie, this is from her website. She says that we deserve the opportunity to live this life right now to the fullest. And I think that really sums up the work that Reemerge is trying to do with veterans. Am I right when I say that?
100%.
Veterans come out of, like we were talking about, Jason, they come out of this just an enormously small world of being with your team almost 24/7. In some cases, it is 24/7. And then you get out and you're kind of left to your own devices. A lot of people scatter to the wind. So I'm grateful. I haven't gotten the opportunity to go to Reemerge and work out with them, but I intend to at some point. I need to. But I'm just really grateful to know that there are people like you, Julie, people like Sefton, and then people like Don and your fellow veterans who participate at Reemerge. These people really care about making a difference. Like Julie said, not just physically, mentally, spiritually, psychologically, in all those capacities. So thank you guys for being so, like Jason said, vulnerable with your stories. Thank you for being willing to share your stories with us. I think you've done a great service to our listeners.
Definitely. And we will put the details of the how-tos and the what-fors in the show notes. That way, if you are listening and you're interested, you know how to do it. I think knowing is half the battle. The other second half is doing it. So we'll do that for Reemerge. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to visit with us today. We are going to go ahead and sign off of the Operation Inside podcast at the Mid-America Veterans Museum. Operation Insight is brought to you by the Mid-America Veterans Museum. The museum is a 501c3 nonprofit business. Do you like our podcast? With your support, we'll continue to bring you great programming. If you'd like to donate, go to mavm.org and click on Donate.